So where you've now moved to Margate, or you've just about to...
No, yeah, I've
You've gone the redundant. So there, basically, you've been lined up. You're going to have some redundancy.
So the redundancies was really because sales weren't as good as they thought. So it's manufacturing. Yeah. So it affected those on the line. It affected those in the tool making department and so on. So it, excuse me, it was a bit of a surprise to me, thinking, what is happening.
Yeah.
But I was secure. I was in a sort of, ought to explain that marketing. Marketing was in a house which was adjacent to the factory. The factory is a great long building where you had the front offices, and then behind that you had the factory. To the left was a massive warehouse. So the one thing I learnt fairly quickly, probably within the first week, that although a lot of the departments would argue against, so you'd have engineering would argue with production would argue with distribution and so on. But the one thing they all had in common was they all hated marketing. So it was marketing. Oh, it was marketing. So that was one of the things I had to sort of get used to, I suppose, and then try and break that down. But marketing at that time didn't really help itself. It had this sort of aloof approach. Mm-hmm. Didn't help being in a separate building, but they had this sort of, we're marketing. We can do what we want. Yeah. But of course, you could do that sort of thing and have that sort of attitude when you were cash rich. Yeah. When you're not so cash rich, that's a different story. Yeah. Then you need all the friends you can get. Mm. And as I say, from me, from working at Hammond Morgan, which had a workforce of probably 100 or so, if that, in the factory, and I'd worked in the factory and I'd known a lot of the people in the factory, and there was a friendly atmosphere, how was sales going, Simon, the duets all right. There's that sort of thing. To a department where it was, or a company where, bloody marketing, it's all right.
How many of you in the marketing team?
Well, the marketing, in those days, Hornby had two key brands. It had Scale Electric and Hornby. So you had a brand manager for each, for Hornby and Scale Electric. And then you had a marketing manager who oversaw us. You then had a marketing director who oversaw everything else and had this blue sky thinking. And then you had... I shared a secretary with the other brand manager, and then there was another secretary for both the manager and the marketing manager and the marketing director, who I'm still friendly with, actually. It was fairly tight. And then you had a graphics guy, chap called Peter Game, lovely guy. I mean, he was from another time. He had blonde hair, long, wavy, streaks of grey, beard, streaks of grey, smoked a pipe, jeans, Cuban heel boots, sort of a corduroy type jacket, and a dry sense of humour. I took to him straight away. Really lovely guy, and dug me out of more than one hole that I managed to get myself into. So he was really good. I mean, he stuck his head round on my first day as he was going home. He said, "Oh, you're still here then?" They said you wouldn't last. And so he was good. The atmosphere was good. But I like, I suppose, being in sales, and everybody is your friend. And if they're not your friend, you try and make them your friend. Yeah. Or you find out why, your friend. And I did find it difficult. And in those days, marketing people, I suppose you would say they would dress smart casually. Well, I being a rep and having sort of worn a suit for several years, I wore a suit. I must have had a sports jacket, but And I do remember a couple of occasions. One when I was walking down the factory, heading to R&D with the marketing director, marketing manager, and he said, "Simon, you don't need to wear a suit all the time." I said, "Yeah, well, I just feel comfortable."
My style,
No, you don't need to. Ah, right. I took that as a hint.
Yeah.
I picked up on that. And there was another occasion when Hornby used to have what they call a Trainex, which was an exhibition train, which would travel around the country. Initially, the very start, would be in October, selling not for the following year, but showing what's coming available for the year after. So it was in advance period. So and I just got to Hornby, where they're surviving on their own. They didn't have the big backing of DCM, so everything was pared back. No longer was it going to be October; it would have to be in January. So it'd have to coincide with the toy fairs and so on, which was at the end of January. And so things changed, and this is what's available for this coming year. So I was on the train, and I'd gone through the gauntlet of presenting a product range that I hadn't put together, but I'd presented to the sales force. But I needed on Trainex in January, what were the customers saying about the range? So get a feel, talking to the reps. And I got called in, and it was a dreadful Trainex. The sales weren't there. The quotas we'd put down for production in that year were being cut back, and it was a pretty bad time. It was a bad time. But anyway, amongst all this, I got called to the marketing director, and he said, need you to go through these figures. I need you to knock 10% off. And you're talking about a range with several hundred items, and each one had to be done that night. And it was all not computed. This was all handwritten, which wasn't a big deal. But at the end of it, he said, and Simon, why are you spending so much time with the salesman? Well, I need to find out, what's going. You're not a salesman anymore, Simon. You've got to be separate from them. And I thought, that's got to be a bit narrow-minded. But I had to play the game. But I then had to surreptitiously see the salesman, and I'd known them because, some of their areas had crossed over mine with H&M. And I'd say, look, if you feel I'm being a bit standoffish, I'm not. But Paul
You've been
said,
advised on that,
I'm not supposed to mix with you.
Why was that? Keeping a distance?
Marketing was up here.
Yeah.
You're not sales. Marketing's here. Sales do what marketing tell them to do. And I didn't. It may have been right. I mean, what did I know? It may have been right in the 60s and the 70s, but with the way the world was changing, and the way the market was changing, to me, it wasn't right.
Was that just about status, or was
it was status? It was all to do. Oh, he's in marketing. And they would always have the nicer cars. And it wouldn't be quite as good as the.
So you had a nicer car then?
No, I tell you, they wanted me to change my Ford Cortina, which I'd had, and was well over 100,000 miles on it. They wanted me to change it for a Maestro. Well,
oh my God.
No, Allegro. I beg your pardon. Was it the Allegro? Which was the bigger one? The Maestro.
The Allegro, yeah.
The Allegro was the bigger one. They wanted me to change it. Do me a favour. You know, I'm not. No, I'm quite happy. No, but Simon, it's there. You can. No. I'm quite happy with my Cortina. I did stick my tail in with that one. I'm not. I don't heap of rubbish.
Yeah.
Because they were problems. My Cortina, by the time it went at this. It was replaced with a Sierra Estate, which was another.
Which is the one up from the Cortina.
Yeah, which was. By the time it went, it was on its second exhaust. It had 2 sets of brakes, 2 sets of tyres.
It was good for a
It
Ford.
was, because when I was repping, most of my time was on the motorway.
Mm.
You know,
So
and I was always taught, you look after your car, you run your car in, you know, you keep the engine clean. Because you may be on the side of the road and you may have to tinker with it. You want a clean engine, don't you?
At least you had a spare tyre then. You ain't
I had
no
a spare tyre. No, that is right. But I mean, cars since then. My boy Joseph, who's in the motor business, he is involved with Audi, sells Audis, and you know, getting it. I said, no, I've got to run it in. You don't have to run them in, Joseph. You sell cars. It's in your interest for me to wear my car out. I run it in, thank you. You know, and I keep it under 3,000 revs. No, you don't need to do that. I do. Yeah. That's what I do.
It's funny how in them days you were told that.
Yeah. And
nowadays people don't even think about
it. No, they don't. No, they honestly don't. Because you do see, you know, brand new cars. You know, it's only, you know, a car that's 25 plate and it's only the beginning of September and they go herring past you on the motorway and you think, well, you haven't run that in, have you? Yeah. So anyway, so there was always that thing. So I did spend time, if I was walking through the factory and you always had the look, you would get looked at, but I always would spend time just to stop on the line and just, what are you doing? It's, you know, how many of these do you have to do? Or they were testing a loco. I'd go and sort of talk to the lady testing the loco. Or I'd go and see the factory manager and just sit and chat.
At this stage, you're not involved with development of new products?
Well, the answer is yes and no. At this stage, I was, part of my job was for new product. When you have a new product development meeting, you would have a file full of ideas and suggestions. So the first year, the 83 catalogue was already done and more or less put to bed. The 84 range was almost decided. So I was, if you like, looking at 85.
Yeah.
So, but things changed quite a bit at Hornby in a very short period of time. As I said, Train X was a bit of a disaster. Cutbacks, people made redundant.
Changing in people's views on toys.
Yeah. And in the company itself, obviously there was a main board. Didn't know anything about it, this main board. And they took decisions that things aren't right, that we need to change, and we need to bring somebody new in.
Right.
And they brought a chap in called Keith Ness, who had been a Hornby rep years ago, before it was Hornby. It was then, the company was owned by Triang. It was the Lines brothers. And he'd been one of these salesmen who was given a load of redundant stock and told to go out and sell it and come back when you've sold it all. And he was a good salesman. But he was... in those days, you would possibly call him a little bit sharp.
Right.
But whatever it was, he was respected. And he went to work for Pedigree and was responsible for a lot of development, but also development of Cindy dolls.
Okay.
Okay. That was the girl next door rather than Barbie the tart from the States. So he was brought in. Now, he was brought in because they realised that Hornby couldn't survive, because they went from a turnover, I think it was something like 24 million, 21, 24 million, which is a lot in the late 70s, early 80s, to something like 6.
That's a massive drop.
And it was over a short period. And it couldn't continue, couldn't sustain it with the people it employed and all the rest of it, even though it cut back. And they realised, well, you know, there's 50% of the market you're not attracting. And the one thing Keith Ness knew about was toys for girls.
Yeah.
And he brought in somebody who he had worked with, a chap called David Bate, and they came in. And it really was a question then of survival of the fittest. And not being married, plenty of time in my hands. I could work late, you know, put the hours in, get in early, work late. Luckily, David Bate, who was my boss, he was the marketing manager, loved toys, loved going out to China and doing the deals. He had an interest in scale electric. They all had an interest in scale. Everybody knows about scale electric because that's easy. You got a wheel in each corner. You start talking about trains. Oh, hang on a minute, that's more than 4 wheels, isn't it? So to a certain extent, I was quite comfortable because I knew more about the train side than they did. Yeah. And so I was left a lot to my own devices, but it was hard work getting tooling past because all the money was going on toys, and they would bring toys in.
Were they just bringing in toys?
Well, what they had, they first of all they had to bring the idea of Hornby dealing with girls' toys with a product called Flower Fingers, which was silk, or if you like, nylon flowers that children could piece together and make a display. Yeah. And they would have.
It was still crafty.
It was craft. Yeah. It was more to do with craft, but obviously aimed at girls. Children. Girls. It was. I know it's terribly sexist, but I mean, it's not my fault. So, things have evolved, I'm pleased to say. And so, so he brought that in, and that was fun. David was out and about China dealing with Chinese or Hong Kong-based company.
Looking for products?
He was looking for manufacturing. We had a guy over there who we'd used for manufacturing. He was very good. And a company we stayed with for a long time. But the aim of the game was really to introduce dolls. Yeah. So the following year was introduced flower fairies. Cicely Mary Alcott flower fairies. Yeah. And we got the license to do these, and the flower fairies came in and was a success. And I have to say, in my humble opinion, that's what kept the doors open at Hornby.
Oh, really?
Else there would have been issues. Right. And there were other toys coming along. There was soft toys. There's a thing called Pound Puppies, which was one of David Bates' things. It was a product brought in from Canada. A company called Irwin had these Pound Puppies, as in dog pound. But David worked on the principle, hang on a minute, pound. If every dog we sold, we could give £1 for guide dogs for the blind, Pound Puppy. Works, doesn't it? Yeah. And that worked there. And there were other toys we developed over the years, some more successful than others, all slightly dubious.
Are they all under the Hornby?
They were all under,
because Hornby is trains.
Yeah, Hornby is trains. So they then decided, well, what we will do, because Hornby means trains, we will brand the girls' toys Prestige. And so everything became Prestige at the bottom, Hornby Company.
Right.
Which caused, this is from Hornby, is it? Oh, no, it says Prestige. It created its own issues there. So, while all this was going on and we were focusing on toys, I wanted to introduce because there was competition coming up fast. Wanted to introduce new locos and things like that. Spend money on new tooling. But there wasn't enough money to go around.
Was there other competitors now doing trains?
Well, what you had now, what was coming on, you had a company called Lima, Italian brand, and they had produced models in European scale, which is what they call HO. But a company called Richard Constam, they owned Beatties at the time, they had persuaded Lima to produce British locos in British scale, which is 176, which is what we call 00. It's an illegitimate scale. It's only peculiar to the UK. And they were started to produce diesel locos and things, and the models were better than Hornby.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, because they were using more modern techniques to design. Locos, Hornby's locos were probably by then 15 years old. These were coming up for brand new, and they were stealing the market. And if Hornby had, I don't want to get too technical, but Hornby had a diesel loco, and Lima produced the same diesel loco, the modelers were starting to say, well, hang on a minute, the Lima one's better. Yeah, Hornby's a toy. And of course, Hornby are only interested in toys because they were doing all this toy stuff. So I was fighting a losing battle. I couldn't advertise in magazines, and because the argument, well, why advertise to people who are going to buy your product anyway?
Yeah.
Why advertise in a model magazine? They're going to buy it anyway. There was a certain warped logic there, but when you've got your competitors advertising in magazines saying how good their product is, it was galling.
Yeah, it's doing
to me.
you wrong.
It was. Yeah.
How do you go about getting to be able to do the product? Did you have to get someone has to say to you, you can do it or you can't do it?
Yeah.
Like you're saying, they were doing the same product.
Well, yeah, because and they were building up relationships. Brush up in Leicester were the big diesel makers. They produce locos like the Class 47, which is a big loco. And there are HST. So, you would talk high-speed trains, you would talk to the people who made them, and they invariably say, oh, yeah, it's fine. Yeah. And Hornby in the past had worked with these people, and they were Hornby were the first to bring in an HST. Yeah. But they brought it in, and of course it was dated by the time Lima did the same. Lima's had more detail on it. The coaches were the correct length, etc. Because when Hornby produced the HST, they were still going through this toy period.
Right. Okay.
So, the fact that the coaches were one window too short didn't matter.
It's a toy.
Yeah, it was a toy. And it didn't matter. But, I soldiered on with these blooming
but you're trying
short
to change
coaches
it from toys,
for years. Yeah. Because the world was going that way.
Yeah.
See, it had been, if you'd said, that's the toy market, in the early 70s, and that was the model market, what had happened by the 80s was basically that. The demand was coming from the modeler. Yeah. But my bosses would never make another loco. You never won't invest in anything again. It's all toys. Model rails. There
was a bit of a lack of investment at that stage.
There was a lack of interest and lack of investment, massive lack of investment. So it was really hard work, and in my book Between the Lines, I outline where I had to basically sell my soul to get permission to produce a couple of locos.
Fighting at this level.
Fighting all the time because there was a chap there who was part of the Lines family, Richard Lines, really great guy, lovely guy, didn't suffer fools gladly, but I learnt an awful lot from him. And if I could get his support, that was great. If I couldn't, or for one reason or another, it wasn't happening, then the model didn't happen. Yeah. It was really, and of course, eventually when Richard Lines left, it was tough. It was even tougher the one thing I would always look for is there a toy angle, which was lucky because in 83, 84, a little blue loco appeared on the TV. So Thomas comes on, and so I go, you know, the morning after the Thomas first appeared on TV, which I think was October. It was October 84. It was during the miners' strike. The phone at Hornby was inundated. Where, you know, where's Thomas? Why haven't you got Thomas? We want Thomas. I then picked up the phone to Britt Allcroft, who was the producer and had the license, and explained to her, you know, would like to look at it. She said, well, I've been ringing Hornby and nobody's bothered to reply.
Really?
No, so I obviously apologised. Anyway, I got off the phone because she'd sort of, you know, this is what I want. I need a market plan. I want to know what products you're going to produce, what your contribution is going to be, the royalty is going to be this. So I put the phone down. I thought, how am I going to do this?
Because if you'd have known that prior, you could have been ahead of the game.
We were. Well,
you could have been producing those as the show came out.
Luckily, nobody was doing, and this is where I learned quite a bit about licensing. Nobody was doing electric Thomas.
Right.
And although there were people doing wind-up, nobody was doing clockwork, i.e. a separate key. There's a subtle difference, certainly when it comes to licensing. All right. So it was then, you know, went up to see and said, got to do Thomas, have to do Thomas. Yeah, okay, what can we do? So we did put a Thomas range together. We did, there were a few lumps and bumps going along the way, but we had Thomas. I was the sole responsible for Thomas and the development of Thomas. And we got some really good numbers out of it. It was a real, it was great. You know,
was that
the sales were good.
Thing that you felt was yours, your product, you brought it to market?
Possibly. There might have been a couple of locos in between, but yeah, I think now you put it that way. Yeah, I think I can sort of lay claim because I did have licensing. When you have a license is like a book of rules, and you stick to them. Okay, because if you don't, there are penalties, and you don't want to upset a licensor. So I would. What we had to do, you'd produce a mock-up, get that approved. You then go to the next stage of tooling, get that approved. Then the decorated sample, get that approved, and then we could go into production. But you would send a sample off a first production model to get approved. Now, I would end up loggerheads with engineering because they want to get the job done. Well, you know, how long is it going to take? No, we need to progress. We want to get moving. Well, you can't. You can't. Well, we will. Well, you do that, and then we lose the license. Your choice.
Yeah.
And that was, you know, and it was sometimes it was like that, and it was like that all the time. All packaging, you know. Oh, we're going to go with the packaging. No, you can't. It's not been approved. You know, I used to spend an awful lot of time going up and down to Southampton because that's where Britt Allcroft was based. So there were challenges.
Who was the decision maker at that time? Who could
What?
say,
Who did? Well, the ideas would come from yours truly, and I would have to, if you like, in those early days, justify. Yeah, I think we can sell them.
Okay.
I think, you know, if Thomas, it was a given.
Would you have to put figures amongst them?
Well, in those days, how many do you think you're going to sell, Simon?
Yeah.
Well, you know, if you go by Thomas, we did this, that, and the other. Well, we probably won't be quite so popular, but it'd be this sort of figure. It was word of mouth. Talk about, you know, back of a fag packet.
Yeah.
It wasn't until we got a new chief exec that things got a little bit more formal when it came to tooling. And then when we had another one, it got even more formal. And then we got another one. It got, oh, bloody hell, I've got to sell my soul for this.
Yeah,
I had to sweat. And the problem when you have this length of decision making is that you know your competitors, and by now Hornby had serious competitors. They would say, well, why don't we make such and such a loco? Okay, well, can you get the drawings? Yeah, we've got the drawings. Da, 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 da. And within a matter of a couple of weeks, if not days, they'd made a decision. With me, it would be, right, I've got to get the drawings. Fine, I've got the drawings. I've now got to put a proposal together. I've then got to get it approved. How much is the tooling? Get all this put down, then present it. Oh, we'll have to think about this.
Yeah.
And then before you knew who you are, 2 months has gone by. And eventually, of course, yeah, okay, but we want it for then. Well, no, hang on a minute. We've lost 2 months. So it was a little bit of a challenge. And it wasn't until some years later that things were able to get a lot slicker, where you'd have a meeting and I'd say, I think we should do this. We can modify that. Da, 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 da. I think we can do that. I'll put together a justification, and then we'll go. And decision will be made in days.
What about the distribution then? How would you
Distribution was, well, in the early days, we had well over 300 retailers. You had mail order houses who would go for, people like Grattan's, Empire, GUS, some of the smaller ones, and they would have train sets, or doing toys. They'd do lots of toys and things like that. We had Spider-Man way before it was on the TV, TV screen or whatever. Yeah. We had all that, and of course, if we had these licenses, I'm digressing slightly. If you had Spider-Man, we might as well do a Spider-Man scale electric set.
Oh, right.
So we do a Spider-Man scale electric set.
Was you with scale electric? Was that done on a different? You were just concentrating on trains at this stage. Was you overlapping?
No, what happened was that on one of the redundancies, the marketing brand manager for Scale Electric went, and I was given the job.
Oh, okay.
Well, I had a bit of knowledge, obviously, because I'd sold it, in retail. And I used to quite enjoy it because you could, catalogue-wise, write the copy for the catalogue, which was quite involved, because if you're describing a loco, when was it built, was it scrapped, and you've got all this copy you have to write. With Scale Electric, it was like a blessed relief, because I could make it up. I've got a Scale Electric. I could have lots of fun. The Italian stallion versus the leaping horse of Ferrari and stuff. And great, I enjoyed Scale Electric because it was it was a relief from the intenseness of trains.
Yeah.
At that time, we were relatively on our own with Scale Electric. There were a couple of competitors that did come up later and cause issues, and we had to go, again, like we did with trains, had to go to a more modified.
Is it still popular, Scale?
I have to say the 132 scale isn't as popular as it used to be.
Is it still a Christmas item?
Yeah, it's one of those things you get out of Christmas, or you buy it for Christmas.
Is that sort of a big area with even Hornby? Do you build up to Christmas? Is that that was always a consideration. Obviously, train sets would be the Christmas thing, but remember, modelers are there all through the year, and so they'd be waiting for the next new loco, etc. Now, you would avoid introducing anything, if you like, in the summer months, from July, say, or June through to August, end of August, beginning of September, because everybody's either on holiday, they're in the garden, or whatever. So you would have to be careful what you released if you did release anything. Sometimes product escaped, and you had to make the most of it. But it was very much a
It was seasonal to a point.
Yeah.
So autumn through to late spring.
What about taking it outside the UK into the world as a product?
Well, you can't. The second largest market for Hornby, certainly was while I was there, was Australia.
Okay.
And then you would have Canada, and then there'd be New Zealand. Now these are what I call expat countries.
I was just going to say
they would have taken their trains with them.
Yeah.
Which was fine. And then we had a distributor, Southern Models, out in Adelaide, who would distribute, and he had when I left, he had distribution rights for Hornby, Scale Electric, Corgi, Airfix, Oxford Diecast,
Wow.
Humbrol.
Is that still the case?
Yeah, I think it's still the case.
What about America? You don't.
America is very much smaller. You sell the majority of trains in the country that those trains ran in. Mm-hmm. So you sell the majority of American trains in America. But the American market is totally different from the UK. Excuse me. Without getting too technical, basically from the 20s through to the 40s, late 40s, you had 4 main railway companies: London North Eastern Railway, London Midland Scottish Railway, Southern Railway, and Great Western Railway. In the States, you have numerous railway companies. So you will probably be, Santa Fe.
Yeah.
Somebody over here will be Baltimore and Ohio. So because there's so more, these companies are more numerous, you'd have people focusing on these. So their productions would be run smaller. They also are in HO scale, which is 187th, and then Hornby 00, which is 176th. Now, I don't want to get too complicated, but they all run on the same width track, but Hornby is the illegitimate scale because of historical facts of size of motors when that half scale, or that scale was HO was being introduced, because they fitted into German locos which were naturally bigger.
Right.
UK locos, because of what they call the loading gauge, i.e. the width of tunnels and so on and so forth, our locos were smaller.
Right.
So you will notice if you travel in Europe on a train, it will feel noticeably wider than it does do in the UK.
Right.
It's only a few inches, but it's noticeable. But so what they had to do, the clever people at Hornby, was keep the back-to-back wheel measurements the same, but make the bodies slightly wider, slightly higher, so they could get the motors in.
All right.
And then you're stuck with it.
Yeah.
You're now stuck with it, because you're talking 37, 38. So you're stuck with it.
Yeah.
And it can never change. And you have people say, should introduce HO. Why have you introduced TT? You could have introduced HO. Well, because you won't sell it.
Yeah.
You're
your
pushing
market
more
mainly UK then?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, tell us a little bit about them when Harry Potter come out. That must have been it.
Well, Harry Potter was another one, because that came across my desk, and should we do it? Shouldn't we do it? We got a new chief exec in who said, yeah, we should do it, and that involved then going to find the real loco, see where the coaches are, which was way up north. And the interesting thing there is that the loco, in they call it the Hogwarts Castle,
The loco they used for the film was actually what they call a hall castle. Both Great Western locos, but a hall. Now, you would probably not notice the difference, and most people wouldn't. But there is a challenge there. Now, I go up to see this hall, and they painted it in this sort of reddy colour, but left the coaches in what they call BR maroon. And can I have a colour swatch? Yeah, where'd you get the colour from? Oh, we went down to B&Q. We got the closest colour we could get to maroon, and that was it. We got a few tins of that. We painted it, and it's a hall. So we've got this agreement with Warner Bros. We don't have a hall loco, but we have a castle. So I paint the castle up in this bright colour. 2 coaches, which are BR coaches, what they call Mark 1s, still maroon. Change the roundel, so it's Hogwarts. Go up, present it to them, and they say, yeah, the coach is the wrong colour. No, the coach is the right colour. No, they're wrong. No, they're right. See your film, go and see the real thing. They're right. Oh, yeah, you're right. Because I said, I'm not changing them, because that would not be right.
Yeah.
So that was all signed off. Later, a few films later on, by then we had a hall. So we did then paint the hall, and that became. So the earlier Hogwarts castles we had were actually castles.
Was that a hard license to get?
Yeah, not hard. It's a hard license to work through.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. A few sleepless nights.
I'd have thought there'd have been a lot of toy manufacturers wanting to jump on that.
Yeah, no, there were a few, and of course they all painted their coaches the wrong colour, including Corgi.
Yeah.
So
did you get? Is that you the only ones producing?
Well, we produced it. There's a German company, a massive German model railway company called Märklin, and they have what they call a 3-rail system, whereas we use 2. And they wanted to borrow our tooling for the coaches and the loco. They would produce a new chassis, which would be 3-rail, what they call 3-rail, have a hot shoe in there. And they spend the money on that. But then they had the same problem. They take it to get approved to Warner's Germany, and they say, no, the coaches are wrong. No, they're not. They're right. So we go through all that, and we've had that. We had that problem right up to the last time it ran it as a license.
So are you still producing?
No, actually, yes. I'm not sure they're still producing the Hogwarts Castle, but there's some Hogwarts product that Hornby.
Was that a good?
Oh, it was good. It was good. But it's like a lot of these things. It starts there, and then the next film it's down here, and the next film it's down there, because it's still a loco with 2 coaches.
Yeah.
You can dress it up, different packaging, but it's still a loco and 2 coaches. But we did well. We did some gold metal parts on the model. We produced in gold, so we produced that as limited edition. So no, we had, it was good.
So when you say the change from toy to models, where do you feel that came about mainly? What sort of period?
That period would have changed round about 96 when we got a new chief exec who was chairman as well, a chap called Peter Newey. By then, Hornby had a toy side and a model side. Peter Newey was very much on the model side. Hornby is model railways, it's scale extract. It isn't water pistols that fire. Yeah. It's not toys.
Yeah.
So what he did fairly quickly was get rid of all the toys, and then said we must focus on what Hornby is and what scale electric is, what do you want to do.
Where are you where are you financially now as a company?
Financially, we were struggling. Yeah, I think we'd made losses. I think
Peter Newey had been on the board, I think as a non-exec, and had said, I'm not sure when he joined, probably the early 90s, but by 96 he had got into a position where I think he'd said, we need to do something with, I can do something with Hornby. It needs modernising, it needs bringing up to date. And that's in principle what he did do. He got us thinking as individuals, because we'd had years of having to beg, borrow, steal to get anything done. But the standard of the product had fallen because we hadn't invested. I mean, for a loco to run smoothly over points, it needs what they call pickups on the wheels. So there's never a point when that loco is going over a point that it's not receiving power. Well, Hornby's idea to save money was to take pickups off.
Yeah.
So it produced an inferior product.
Of course, yeah.
Which, just isn't right. And it hadn't, the brands hadn't been invested in. And so that's what Peter brought. We had to think differently. He came in like a whirlwind, he was minimalistic. He was a minimalistic sort of chap. He liked white. So the offices were updated. All the furniture, the old furniture, filing cabinets, which were all odds and sods and all that all went. The front of the factory where we'd parked our cars, that was all gravelled,
So were you scaling down then to meet your turnover sort of thing?
It was hard work to get the numbers
to
up.
Get it to balance.
To get it to balance. It was hard work.
Yeah.
And I was running out of ideas because I was trying to introduce new product using old tooling.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's I introduced a thing called Time for a Change, which was a period in 1948 when these 4 companies ended up being turned into British Railways. So I introduced 4 locos, Great Western, LNER, LMS, and Southern, and packaged them with a Royal Dalton plate of that loco and numbered them all. Not only numbered the locos, but also the plates, collectible. But I was using tooling which by then was the best part of 20 years old. Okay. So I'm looking for ideas all the time to make use of old tooling. And it worked to a point, but I don't think anybody was, I've got all these other new companies coming in with brand new locos. So, Hornby was living off its name.
Is it expensive then to create new tools?
Yeah. Hundreds of thousands, well over £100,000.
Is it?
Yeah. Okay. Depending on obviously what it is, how big it is, and the amount of detail, and how many variants you want to get from a suite of tools. But it's not too difficult to this day.
So you're weighing up your return on that.
You're weighing your return. You do. You work out how many variants can I do in a year. So let's say 3. Yeah. So I've got 3, and they're all slightly different. And how many of each do you think I can sell? And how many will I sell the following year, etc. And you work out the numbers out on that. What's the tooling? And then it's the tooling versus the return. Yeah. And you've got to try and pay for your tooling in 1 year, which I have to say was getting harder and harder by the time I left.
Did you start creating one for collectors, so to be limited edition?
Well, they're all... What you had before the financial crash of 2008, 9, you would have people who would probably buy 3, and you'd have 3 different markets. You would have the beginner, the enthusiast, and the collector. Okay. Right now, the collector probably wouldn't have a layout, but collected the locos, and sometimes you'd have a collector who might buy 2, might buy 3, where he would keep one which was in its own outer. He would keep one which is out of the outer but still in its inner box, the Hornby branded box. Then he'd have another one which he would have out of the box. So that wasn't uncommon.
Okay.
They would have,
Yeah,
you know,
someone buying
you would buy
three.
three.
Yeah.
Things did change after the financial crash, I hasten to add. But so yeah, collecting was good. So it was good to have a model that people to collect, and that was something that I had right the way through. And I'm pleased to say Hornby are still doing it.
Yeah.
You know, something that is collectible. You would have the enthusiast who would, excuse me, buy that super duper new model with all the detail, all the bells and the whistles. But that model, because of its price, probably wouldn't be bought by the beginner.
Yeah.
Now, when we started improving the models, and they were sort of going from retailing at £40 to something like £80 to £90, you got a bit of a gap there.
Yeah.
Because I've just bought a train set. My boy wants that model there, but that model's costing as much as I pay for the train set. That makes sense. So that's when I introduced a mid-range called Railroad, which was using, justifiably, old tooling,
Yeah.
cleaned up, all the pickups, good motors, etc., but could sell at a price which was a nice in-between set and the hyper detail one.
Was there ever a period where you felt you were running out of ideas?
No, I have to say no. There was, because I would always work, and this is something that Peter Newey, the new chief exec, taught me. Always work on a 3-year plan. So I'd always be working on, let's say 2000. I've got my 2000 because I started my 2000 back in '98. So that's now more or less formalised. 2001, I've got quite a bit in there. I know where I'm going to go because I've got new models there, but I've got variants I can add in there. And the third year, I can put another one in there. So you're gradually filling it out. And then you think, hang on a minute, 2020, now I'm thinking this far, 2020 is Hornby's 100th anniversary. That's when 1920 was when Frank Hornby first launched his clockwork O-gauge system. Must remember that. Put that over there. And so there's always something. So you're looking for occasions. Could be Winston Churchill's funeral.
Did you never bring out that one again, just as a 100 year?
What?
That the original clockwork.
Yeah, but I brought it out as electric.
Oh, you did.
But because he did turn it into electric.
Right.
So we did.
You did bring it out again.
I
as
did
another
bring it out as
1902,
tin
I
plate.
think.
But of course, the tooling, I had to go.
Oh, I was going to say.
I had to go to Hungary to get that done.
Wow.
Yeah. To where is it? They all go for their I forgot the city. They all go there on these weekends now. But anyway, and they did a brilliant job.
Because you had a period where you have a period where you sort of retired and come back.
Yeah. Well, what happens is you would mention that. Yeah. What happened was we got on really well. Peter Newey set us on the right road. Peter Newey pulled us out of manufacturing in the UK to manufacturing in the Far East. A lot of people thought that was disgraceful.
I was going to say, how did that go down?
Well, it went down. I had three annoyed letters.
Okay.
Because at the end of the day, what everybody said, oh, you're doing it to save money. No, it wasn't. What we were doing basically was to save the company, but also you got more for your money.
Yeah.
You got more detail. You know this business I was telling you about, boiler bands?
Yeah.
Okay. What the Chinese did, manufacturers did, they have spray masks. So you have a spray mask and cut where the boiler bands are. You have, you spray it orange. Sorry, black. You then get the same spray mask, but this time in the groove you got some wire. that goes over in between the grooves. So when you spray it orange and take the mask off, the orange has covered over the black. You've still got the black in the middle because that's what's protected. Then you've got the orange. And not only could they do it, they could do that with 5 colours, because occasionally you'd have 5 colour bands.
Yeah.
And that was the thinking that they did. They're out there. Mention it, because I saw this first done before we'd moved. Because I went out to China on my own volition to see how it was done. I went back and I said this to the engineers. This is what they do. Can't do that. You'd never afford to pay for that. And it was always this sucking through of teeth. I would take the models that had been produced in China and say, look how good this is. Yeah. Look at that. And they go, and then they get a magnifying glass and they might just see a little bit of feathering. You wouldn't be happy with that, would you?
Yeah.
You know, and it was such a shame.
Yeah.
It really, really upset me, because these people were basically doing the turkey looking forward to Christmas. You know, amazing, they were killing their own jobs.
Yeah, and did.
And did.
Yeah.
Now, some of them are
quite, a lot of manufacturing.
No, Hornby was relatively innovative when it wanted to be, but it couldn't compete. Yeah. And that was the shame. And it was noticeable that by the time we had moved manufacture, which was 2000, completed by 2000, the time we moved everything out there, the quality, the finish, the commitment that people saw Hornby had made, they bought the product. And whereas, you know, you might just sell 1,000, all of a sudden you sold 5,000.
Yeah.
Because people wanted to buy it. We introduced the first loco we produced solely out of China, designed in the UK, but if you like, developed and given a bit of magic and produced in China was what they call a merchant navy class. It was clan line. And that model on its variants sold in the first year 17,000. That hadn't been heard of since the 60s. 17,000. It ran, this loco ran so smoothly. I mean, when I saw it run, I sent a note off to the factory owner. I said, it runs like cream off jelly. It was so smooth. And he printed it out and put it up in the factory.
Did he? Yeah.
And that, you were asking
for you,
we had arrived.
Yeah.
This is what I've been working for 20 odd years. We've got, we can now make inroads. Hornby can now be rightly the brand leader.
Yeah.
And we can forge forward. And we were starting to be cutting edge. We had competition. We had a company called Bachmann. Great people, made in China, who had used some of the old paletoid tooling back from the 70s. They'd started their business with that and evolved, and the product they were producing was great. So it was a race. Who could produce this better than that, better than that?
Yeah.
And it was what the modelers were asking for.
Yeah.
And it was a time, and I maintained it right up until I left, that I would go to shows and they'd say, love what you've done with such and such. I said, always noted. But what have we done wrong? What is there something you're not happy with? I know we got one review where they complained about the packaging. And then you think, I really have arrived with this loco. Yeah. But that was always, how can we improve? How can we improve? And I have to say, every locomotive, every model produced since Clan Line, since 2000, has been, trace its DNA, if you like, back to that loco.
Is all the manufacturing done in China now?
Yeah.
Even down to the packaging?
Even down to the packaging.
So everything's...
Yeah, because of run quantity, the finish, they have that lovely gloss finish, which, you know, the packaging Hornby was getting
the product
was matte.
But you know, the packaging has changed. It has evolved. The logo packaging had to change because there was so much detail. Try and keep it in the old style. You know, with all the mail order going through, you'd send it through the post, and you'd end up with a bag of bits. So that had to change and evolve. But that's because mail order was getting bit more and more, and the smaller retail shops were closing. So anyway, you asked me about. So what happened? So everything was going well. We're doing fine. There was the financial crash, 2008, did affect. We had a bit of a perfect storm. We had the issues with manufacturing out of China. We had rising costs. We had our main supplier was bought out by our main competitor, which didn't help matters much, and things really slowed down. So we had trouble there. We had issue. We had the Olympic Games 2012, which a lot of money was spent on that, both in advances and so on, which didn't work out as popular as we thought. I have to say, every Hornby item I developed for it did sell. Okay. But things like key rings and little figurines, etc., didn't. We did well with the corgi taxis, if I remember rightly. But, you know, all in all, this was piling up where we were having one yearly loss after another. So eventually, the chief exec was moved over and eventually did leave, which was a shame because he was a good chief exec. And the company's main investor put one of their people in charge, and the atmosphere changed. Things were being changed for the reason it needed to be changed. But hang on a minute, the system does work. I'm not getting the product to sell. You give me the product, I can sell it. But, you know, and things were becoming very difficult. And
you're not enjoying it now.
It was beginning to become a little bit tedious. You know, the Monday morning, you know, you'd have the directors come round, and they'd all put whiteboards up, and you put your figures up there, and it was repetitive. You know, said you know, that never came in. Couldn't do that. Couldn't do this. That, you know, it'll be like this every time. Give me the product, I can sell it. But as long as it's not happening,
feel like
it's not going to work. It's not going to work. And then the then marketing director decided that he was going to change everything. So we'd had, it was 20, I've got to get it right. It was the end of 2013. And I do remember thinking, having just finished I consider one of the best presentations of the 2014 range ever. It was a really good range. And I remember thinking, well, you know, 13's unlucky, but you've got through it all right. And it was round about the 17th of December. I was heading up to Scarborough to see somebody who couldn't come down to my presentation to the press, and I get a phone call, and it's from a colleague who said, well, have you heard the news? No, what news? Well, didn't you get the memo? Memo? What? That Nat wanted to see us in the marketing room? Yeah, that one. He wanted to see everybody. I said, yeah, well, I'm travelling, but I'm presuming it's to say thank you for all the hard work. We'd achieved all the targets and all the rest of it. He said, no. He said, he's totally restructuring. We're all redundant.
No.
Yeah. And I said, all. And I thought, I knew it was coming one day. You know, I thought, I managed to fool them all for the best part of 30 years, and now it's come home to roost.
And he said, yeah, and he went through it all and changed the whole structure. I mean, it's so complicated, I can't even describe it. And I put the phone down, and I'm still heading up to Scarborough. I think it's the A61. And I'm thinking, oh, what? And then the phone rings, and it was I call her the personnel manager. And she said, oh, when are you next back in the office? I said, well, probably tomorrow. And she said, oh, because I've got something to tell you. I said, is this to do with the redundancies? Yeah. Who told you? I said, doesn't matter. What's the story? And she went, I said, right, okay, so I haven't got a job. Well, it's the way it's been restructured. You can reapply. You can apply for a job. Okay. All right, okay. Well, thanks, Julie. So I'm moving on. Still heading to Scarborough. And I thought, this is actually quite serious.
Yeah.
So I did a bit of a handbrake turn, looked in the mirror, handbrake turn, and then raced back. I forgot to say that I'd said to this colleague of mine, I said, well, I'll have a word with him when I get back. He said, well, you'll be lucky. He said he's going on holiday on the 7th tonight. So I then raced back from the A61. I wasn't far from Scarborough, but I think I got back to Margate in probably about 4 hours.
Wow.
Yeah, it was. I don't know. I didn't get a speeding ticket.
I was just going to say, no flashing
Yeah,
cameras.
I did. There's a bit on the A1 which you know about. But anyway, I walk in. People are a bit surprised to see me. I said, well, where's Nat? Oh, he's in a meeting. I said, well, when he comes down, can you tell him I'd like to see him. Good long story short, I go and see him. He explains this system he's got. It certainly didn't make sense. To me, it seemed as if nobody's really going to make a decision. The only person who's going to make a decision would be him. Well, if he's not here, because by now we'd thought about having T-shirts printed, Nat on tour, because he'd been all over the place. And I thought it just doesn't make sense. And I did say to him, I said, well, basically what you're telling me then is I haven't got a job. I can't really say that because of,
Yeah.
Even longer story short, we do the toy fairs, and we do, you remember, the whole of the marketing department hasn't got a future, don't know what they're doing. The toy fair, both the UK and the German, went off without a hitch. Now, lesser people would have turned around and said, you want to do the toy fair, do it yourself. Yeah, I'm on holiday, I'm on sick.
Yeah.
We didn't. We did the shows and we did a professional
To the best
job.
of your ability.
Got it right.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, eventually, toy fairs are over. We have these interviews, and I was offered a consultancy job. For tax reasons, I had to be away from the company for a month, but after a month, I could go and be consultant. But in the meantime, I had to find other people because you can't just have one. If you've left the company, you can't be a consultant for that company.
Yeah.
You have to have others. So I then went looking for others, which I did. I did consult for Hornby. It ended up. It was a funny period because I would go to Hornby. I'd say, right, I'll be there three times a week, but you really began to feel like you weren't in it, you were out of it. They would go off for these meetings, but you'd be sitting there on your own, and I began to feel uncomfortable. Was I this smell that's still hanging about?
Yeah, you weren't enjoying
And
it.
I was doing stuff for them. I did this. I did a blog for them, and I had other clients, which was
You're
enjoyable.
established in Margate now, aren't you?
Yeah.
You're living there.
I live in Margate. Yeah, I've lived.
By
lived
now,
there.
it's all you've got your own life.
I've got my own life. I'm married and
You're
all the rest of
remarried
it.
and
Remarried. Yeah, and love her. I had one of the interesting contracts I had was with the Science Museum. They were doing their own range of locos and things, so I worked with them for a time. Not necessarily the easiest.
Well, when you say doing their own range of locos,
well, what they were doing, they wanted a brand of they would get a unique loco from Hornby and package it and sell it as in their own packaging.
Okay. Yeah.
So I sorted all that for them. At the end of the day, they tend to be, in those days, civil servants. And when I left the tax office, I'm never going to work for a civil service again. Because you would have a meeting, had this meeting, went all the way into London, had this meeting with the guy who was heading up this this special range of products. And it lasted an hour and left it. And I thought, well, not decided on anything.
What have I achieved here?
What have I achieved?
Yeah.
Waste of time.
Yeah.
Total waste of time. So I wasn't overly upset when the contract came to an end, but I was with him for the best part of 2 years, which was good. It was an experience. Working for yourself is a big experience.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, I kept in touch with Lyndon Davis. Lyndon Davis was the owner, managing director of a company called Oxford Diecast. And I'd worked with him with putting it together using his tooling of 1/76 scale models, arranged for Hornby, which were different colours, different words. It was called scale autos. And we'd been quite successful. And then, to put a spanner in the works, Hornby bought Corgi, which was, if you like, a competitor. Not much of a competitor, Oxford, but they were a competitor. And it was suggested after a while that I didn't deal with Oxford anymore.
Yeah.
So we stopped that, but still bumped into each other at shows, fairs, and all the rest of it. Had a chat. He had a similar sense of humour to me, similar in background, but he was a very clever guy. And anyway, so I'm sitting in my office, which is a shed at the bottom of the garden. It was round about June time. So I was in my shorts, it was quite warm, and I get a phone call. No, I get a text. That was it, I get a text from him saying, I want to suck your brains out. I want to know everything there is to know about railways, etc. So I meet up with him, and we eventually launch his range of railways, which is Oxford Rail.
Okay.
And we worked together on this project for a couple of years. Did a couple of locos, etc. It was going well, and one afternoon I got the phone call. This was in the June. I've just had a funny phone call. I've just had a meeting with the main shareholders of Hornby, and they're asking whether I'd be interested in being the chief exec at Hornby. I said, well, they've already got one. He said, yeah, I told them that. And he said, no, they think I'd be a good fit. And I said, well, yeah, I think you would. I think you do them. I think you'd be great at it. I said, look, if you need any sort of inside information, or if you want any help at all, you just give me a shout. I'm quite happy to help. And he said, well, I'm pleased you said that. He said, because if the job is offered, I'd want you there with me.
Oh, okay.
So, would you? I think it was a nanosecond. Took me to say yes. Of course, brilliant.
Yeah, well, you're going to work with someone that
dream come true.
Yeah.
This because he was of a similar opinion to me of how the company is and how it could be run, as was, and we'd also got somebody, Oxford Rail, called Tim Mulhall, and he was part of the team as well. So, we had the Three Musketeers, as it were.
Yeah.
And it sort of said, yep, it's fine. And then we'd meet up. I said, any news from Hornby, the board, anything? No, not yet. He said, if I don't hear anything, it's fine. He said, we just carry on doing what we're doing. Anyway, eventually it got, it's going to happen. We'd put together a proposal, what we could do with the company. Part of that was TT. But I've got no date yet. And that went on for a couple of weeks. And I had booked myself a holiday to go to a place called Lefka, Greek island, near Dre. Well, what I'd done the year before was go there. It's a great place to sit and write, etc. And I'd left it till October, right at the end of the season. That's basically, I said, what's going to happen? It's all going to kick off while I'm in Niedre.
Yeah.
So, and guess what? It did. Because this was the same year that, what was the airline holiday company that went bust? But it was the same year that company went bust. And
Not Freddie Laker.
No. This was, it will come to me. It's in the book.
Yeah. Well, people will read that.
It will be in the book. But anyway, I got home by Theresa May Airways, and I turned up there on the Friday. My wife wasn't very happy after the way they treated you. Yeah, but it's totally different now, Myra. She wasn't happy. But I went there. I arrived, got a round of applause from the Hornby team,
Lovely.
which was nice.
Yeah.
Mind you, I had stopped off and bought them some donuts. They're easily bought. And so we started then. There was no real preparation. The place was a mess. They'd moved from Margate to Sandwich, the old Pfizer building, which was a soulless place. Soulless. Building in the middle of a field, in the middle of a marsh. It was awful. And the first day I was there, stopped and had lunch. And I said, Lindy, I can't get out of this place. This is awful. Which eventually we did.
Right.
But, we set about. We had our meetings. This is where we'd have our lunchtime meetings. We need to do this, need to do that. Had to make personnel changes, etc. Got, everybody was aware that we're all in it together.
Yeah.
I'm no better than you. Mm-hmm. I need you to do the job.
Yeah.
And he, Linda was never hairs and graces. He had a very successful company. He used to bomb around in an old Mondeo. He's a genuine guy.
Yeah.
And we, the aim was, and I always said, not happy until we made that pound profit, which is basically what we did in 2020.
Right.
So that was 20. I went back in October 2017, and it took us the best part of 3 years. Because starting from nothing, we had nothing. There was no
exciting time.
Oh, it was. Can I tell you, it was fabulous.
Yeah.
And do I miss it? Yeah, I do, because it was great.
Was that the best time?
I think it was the best of times. Yeah. I think because all of a sudden, I think going back 40 years, you when you're running a company, you need people on board. You need you're all in it together.
Yes,
And when I go back to the beginning of this conversation, marketing was up there. You couldn't. No, nonsense. You have to be on the ground floor. You have to talk to people.
Yeah.
You have to get them on side. We always said new people would come, and we always say the door is always open. If you have a problem and your line manager, come and see me. Come and see Lyndon. Lyndon, at least once a month, he would go around the Hornby office
talking to everybody. Everybody.
So it's not about being clever. It's
No.
about being
No.
having common sense.
There
and
are
being
very
sensible.
few. You've hit it on the
I
head.
noticed that you said
there are
this
very
before.
few clever people in this world. They really are. I've known a few, but very few. There's a lot who think they are.
Yeah.
But no, you've got to be. You've just got to be aware, and a majority of it is common sense. But you also got to have a passion. Lyndon had a passion. I have a passion. Tim had a passion. And that's what we would do. And whatever it takes, we would do it. And I think, we had some, great times. We had a lot of lucky breaks. We had the BBC two-parter. We had the Yesterday Channel, 2 series of that. That's TV. You cannot buy. That's advertising. You can't buy that.
Yeah. Where did things start turning for the best then? When you've taken over.
So it was basically, I'm sitting there, 2017. There's nothing really organised for 2018. It's a mess. So we've got to knock that into shape. We've got to bring back some of the old stuff like meeting the retailers, organising retailers, and showing them what's new for 2018. Talking to them, what have we gone wrong? I agree. You can't sell direct to people, or basically sell new product to direct and expect Mr. Retailer to support you.
Yeah. So did you start to sell online or things like that?
No, the selling online had started many years previous, because it was considered that was the thing
way to go,
to do, because even Lego were doing it. Everybody was doing it, but it was. Days gone by, I said there were 300 retailers. They were closing. So you could have a town where you couldn't buy any Hornby stuff.
Yeah.
Now, we tried concessions, and we ran some concessions, which was quite successful. But you also had to think, and there's a lot of mail order houses out there, but we have to offer a service. And the service was, but we didn't discount. Mr. Retailer, who offered a mail order service, could discount.
Yeah.
So it was always there, but you could always buy cheaper. Where it started to go wrong was before I returned, they started to do deals.
Okay.
And Mr. Retail would probably have the product in stock, new product, and it'd be sitting on his shelf. Hornby, after say 3 months, would offer it cheap. And I mean cheap. And of course, that was the thing we had to get. They had to trust Hornby. And that's one of the reasons when we met the retailers, talked to them, sent a note out and said, this is the trust. It is the trust.
Is there a big returns policy in Hornby? Is that
There is a returns policy.
does that have an impact on it?
It used to with Toys R Us. But the strength that Hornby had, although it has gone through some changes just recently, is the fact that it has a service department. It also has a series of service dealers as well. And that was the one thing I was trying to bring back while I was there, and it wasn't easy getting the terms and conditions right. But it does offer that, and that was its that was its strength, offering spare parts and so on.
Yeah, I
But
just
think
wonder what
sort of
effect that
changed.
would have on the turnover and things like that if you've got lots of returns coming back. And
Well, you would always allow for a percentage. Lots of returns. It would be manageable. It would be, you
Being
would
that you're
have
being
allowed for
manufactured
it. But I mean,
in China.
the big thing, but we had QA over there. Not that the ball wasn't dropped occasionally, but you got QA, and then you had QA when it came into the warehouse.
yeah.
So if there was an issue, it could be
sorted
picked
out,
up. Occasionally, and this is one of the things, I used to, soon as shops were open after Christmas, and it made easy with social media, are there any problems? Are the scale electric hand throttles okay? Or
Where would you
was the
get?
track
Was your main returns on scale electric or the trains?
Probably because we ended up probably selling more trains. Yeah, probably proportionally.
Yeah.
There wasn't a lot between them, to be honest. But you would have, because the detail was more on the locos, you would get damage.
Yeah.
Product.
I was just thinking people should understand that there is like returns policies, and
Yeah.
you do get problems with big products.
Yeah, I mean, technically speaking, if you buy a product from a shop and there's a fault with it, you should send it back to the shop, not to Hornby. I was always of the opinion that if somebody did send it back to you, you would repair it. You wouldn't return it to them saying, no, you've got to send it to the shop. That didn't happen. And I would have people ring me up and say, oh, I bought this, it's not worked. Okay, just send it to me, I'll get it sorted. Oh, well, I've just spoken to customer services and they said I've got returned to the shop. No, just send it to me, I'll get it sorted. That's customer relations.
Yeah.
I mean, we had this was a few years ago. We had a chap who wrote to one of these forums, who hated Hornby. He had bought this loco. He tried to put a decoder in it, this little chip, so we could run it on digital control, and couldn't get it in. Doesn't work. Heap of rubbish, etc. And I read this, and I knew the moderator, and I said, Pat, speak to him, get him to send me the loco. Will you? So the loco did eventually arrive. It looked as if it had been through World War III. It was mullered to an extent, and there was nothing you could save from it, to be honest. So I got a loco from the warehouse, same loco from the warehouse. I got Emma, my assistant, to put in the decoder, fitted it, wrapped it all up all nice, sent it off to him. Hornby were the best thing since sliced bread.
Well,
Best
again,
thing.
yeah,
You couldn't beat their service. It's great. That loco probably cost us maybe £30, £40. But the PR you got from it is endless.
That's why service is important, especially for a brand like Hornby.
Yeah.
Because you are a big brand.
Yeah.
So there's.
So I mean, it's and you'd have, you'd have people send stuff back, and always try and do the best to get it sorted.
So after your period, now you've gone back. You've been there for a period of time. Are you back? Is that the thing starting to level out now?
What happened again was there was a change. There was a change of management. Lyndon was the CEO. He moved over to non-exec chairman. They brought in a new chief exec, and I thought, and looking back in the history, it was always, when you get a new chief exec, there's always going to be a change. Yeah. And I was sort of in my 70s then, and I was thinking, maybe I've done enough. And we'd had Easter, and it was the Tuesday after the bank holiday Easter weekend, and I was stood there because I always like to be in the office by 5:30. I thought, are you going to be doing this? Is this really? Do you think you should be thinking about moving away from it all? And
we all have them thoughts.
Yeah, and I thought I might just chuck it in. I did give myself till Christmas. I'll do it Christmas. But that day, I had a meeting with the new chief exec, and I decided, maybe I should go. And couldn't have been fairer. Got the deal all sorted. I have to say nice things about Hornby, but I wouldn't say anything derogatory, not on camera.
But financially, they were good for you.
Yeah.
For you. Yeah.
I mean, the Hornby was 40 years and more. Hornby allowed me. I mean, I went all over the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
not always business class.
Yeah.
I had to
No,
wait.
but still.
I had to wait those last few years before I went business class because that was apparently I was insured,
Okay.
final salary insurance, and when the financial director found out I'd travelled, economy, she nearly had a heart attack. I thought I was the one supposed to have the heart attack. And then after that, it was business travel. And I loved it. Yeah, it was nice, business travel. But given the fact that up until then, I'd basically flown tourist or World Traveller Plus, which was slightly bigger seats. I went all over the world. I went to Japan. Japan's a lovely place. I came back from Japan always weighing less. Couldn't eat the food.
What about so biggest achievements for you in Hornby?
Big achievements?
What do you feel your biggest achievements are?
Biggest? I think...
Smoky?
Well, Smoky Joe. Well, yeah, I mean, that was one. I think if you ask me, I think TT was the big one because I was doing that basically on my own. Obviously, had to pitch it on my own. What's the market like? I've no idea. But I know in my gut it will. Right. There's a need for it, and I've been convinced of that for years. So I think that, and then obviously working with the team to get it out there and launch, and yeah, it's a success and it's growing all the time, and it's doing what I felt it would do. It won't damage 00, but people who aren't into 00 aren't going to suddenly say, "Oh, I'm going to do TT." But it's people who are thinking of coming into model railways. TT's a great scale because I can get a lot on this table.
What sort of people have you met over the years who are really into their train sets and things like that?
Well, obviously Pete Waterman. Rod Stewart, he's a brilliant model maker.
What do you think the attraction of it is?
Well, it's creative, and it is. You can lose yourself in your own world, and I think that's the beauty of model railways. You lose yourself. You're creating your own world. As I said, it's a passion, but you may have so many business worries and you just need to unwind. Go up into your loft, go into your work, whatever, make some fences, make a couple of trees, just watch your trains go around. It's a relaxation. From a mental point of view, it was very important. Didn't really hit home until the COVID thing.
Have you got your own set now?
No.
No.
No. I know.
You're not allowed.
I'm an anathema, aren't I? Because people say, well, have you built your TT set yet? No, I haven't. I haven't had time, really. Would you like to do one then? I built, and this was sort of filmed, actually, in one of the TV programmes. 2 or 3, 4 years ago, I think it was. I'd said, quite foolishly, to my wife that, I tell you what, we have a grandson, Louis, and he likes trains. And I said, you know what? I'll build him a train set. Make him put it on a board, do a train set for him. And we were doing sort of a train set in a box, complete thing with scenics and all the rest of it. And so I got one of those from the factory shop, from the Hornby Visitor Centre, got a board, and that's where it stopped. And Myra said, "Are you going to make him this?" Yeah, I better do. Of course, now it's November. It's bloody cold out in the garage. So
you ain't got long to get it done then.
I start putting it together, and you put the ballast down, you put the track down, you think, could do with a bit more track and a bigger siding. Right, then I'm going to put some scenery down. Right, well, over there is going to be a forest. I'll have a forest there. And then I need a road, and the road goes to the centre bit here, and there's a bus there. I've got a catering van there. I've got a queue, and they're waiting for their bacon sandwich. And you start making up stories. Now, when I was told that you make up stories when you're putting scenes together by the guy who was doing the Hornby catalogue, and he puts, what we call, sexy pictures of the stuff. And he told me that's what him and his mate were doing, were putting together a story. And that's exactly what I was doing. There's a guy stopped by a policeman on his scooter because he was speeding. And things like, and there's the vicar and the verger. Is it the vicar and the verger? And he's talking to the lady in the bungalow over the fence, over the hedge.
Yeah, and you're creating your own little world.
It is. You create, and even though it's plumbing cold, time disappears.
Yeah.
Are you coming in? Oh crumbs! It's dark out there, and it is so enjoyable.
So is this the first time you've actually got into that? Then?
So really, well, I cheated a bit when I first got involved with my second wife. She had a boy, Joseph, who's now 35. He was 6 at the time, and I got. I said, I'll get him a railway layout, and I cheated because I got the guys in displays to make it for me.
That's a bit easier.
Yeah, it was. and to be fair, Joseph liked it, but he enjoyed taking the engine to pieces better.
Yeah.
Like
they like playing with the box.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Joseph is very, very clever. So just that one. But one day, it does honestly boil down to time. Because I spent last end of the summer, autumn, winter, into spring with.
Well, tell us a bit. Tell us a bit why you decided to do the books.
Right. Well, the TT book. It was one of those. I'd left Hornby, and I had a little time waiting. I'd sent out some, bits and pieces to try and get some clients. A bit of time, and I thought back to the days when Hornby 00 was first introduced, and I've told you business about the motor and all the rest of it, and I thought it would have been really good if somebody had gone from Frank Hornby's just come back from Europe, and he's talking about this HO scale, this smaller scale to what they're producing, and how it had developed, and how they found the motor didn't fit, and and why it went bigger, and all the rest of it. So was the story, and then there was the war and how they developed the system. They went from 3-rail to 2-rail, etc., and then the demise. And I thought it would have been great if all that had been put down, but they hadn't. Mm-hmm. But TT was the first scale, true scale, 1 to 120th, i.e. 120 times smaller than the real thing. First time that a true scale model railway system on British lines had been put together basically ever.
Right, okay.
Because N gauge is 1 to 148th, where in Europe it's 1 to 160th. Again, the same motor business. So I decided I think I would make a couple of articles. So for a magazine. So I started to write it, and then I better put that in. And then that happened, and then all crumbs. Yeah, we had to redo that, and it just grew. And I thought, I finished it. And then I thought, oh no, hang on a minute. There's my trip to Australia, and what I had to sort out then. So that was a chapter. So that had to go in.
Yeah.
So before you knew where it was, I thought, blimey, this is not 2 articles.
Yeah.
This is a book, I think. So I spoke to a chap called Paul Appleton, who was the first person I spoke to about TT right in the very early stages, outside of Hornby anyway. and I sent him what I'd written, and he said, yes, it's a book. I'll edit it for you, because he was editor. He went through it all. And in between time, I said, well, where can I get it published? And he said, well, you can try, because I know people who've written books, and it's taken them ages to get it printed.
Get it down.
So I wrote to a company called Morton's, and they told me what they expected to see as a proposal. So a synopsis of each chapter and the reasons why and all the rest of it. And I sent that off to them. And I got a very nice email back saying, it's very interesting. It isn't the sort of book we produce, but we believe there would be a market for it.
Okay.
So I thought, oh, right, okay, that's fair enough. And then I thought, well, Key Publishing, they do the Hornby magazine. I knew the owner, Adrian, known him some time. And so I sent him the synopsis. Basically, it was everything I sent to Morton's apart from addressed to Morton's.
Yes, yeah.
And Adrian came back and said, we're very interested in this. And also, we'd also be interested in, your time at Hornby.
That's
So
excellent,
out of one email for one, I got two books, which this was virtually finished. So that got sent off to be edited again, which was interesting because there were certain bits I didn't pick up on that were edited. Right. I thought they were just looking at spells. So I learned from that. And then the second book, Between the Lines, was I'd started writing Between the Lines back in 2014, 2015.
Wow.
But it was a life story.
Yeah.
So it was everything to do with everything that happened in my personal life, as well as Hornby. So
So it's your personal story as well.
Yeah, so I took all that out because it was it was the sort of thing I was going to write, but I didn't want anybody to read.
Yeah, I get you, yeah.
So I had the basics, so I had to rewrite a lot of the Hornby bit and then work through. And then, the processes of more or less I've just said, you go from one chief exec to another and how it evolved. But it tells the story of how basically model railways has evolved over 40 years from basically being a toy with a bit of interest from modelers, where it's become modelers and less interested as a toy.
Yeah. What do you think the future is then for Hornby?
I think it will evolve. I think, my honest feeling is that it is a market that is shrinking because there's so much out there already.
Do you feel youngsters will still be?
I think there's interest with some youngsters. There's certainly interest from the 50% of the market we were ignoring. Yeah. I've noticed that more and more, actually. I noticed it very much. A lot of wives with their husbands at the shows. Certainly at the show I was at a couple of weeks ago. But because of manufacturing's changed, excuse me, what you could do, you could approach a Chinese manufacturer and say, here are the drawings. Can you produce this loco? Here's a wad of money. Get on with it. You could do that. Yeah. And so a lot of people can do that. Now, where you have companies like Hornby, where you have overheads, etc., and you have a machine that needs feeding, you have smaller companies with smaller overheads who employ maybe 20, maybe 4 people. And so the margins they work to are different. So they can probably add more detail to a model. More detail costs money, but they can do that because they have the margin to do that. So Hornby can attack that, but will always probably be that little bit dearer. But there's so much being produced and put into a market now
that it makes you wonder where it's all going.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's the is. No one really knows where it's going to end up.
Well,
do they?
I think it will end in tears at bedtime. Really, I think you asked about Hornby. I think Hornby will continue, but I think that it will probably evolve more into a digital type thing. Maybe there's a lot more they can do to the models to make them realistic. And I was teasing the development manager that a couple of weeks ago what he should do. At the moment, I mean, Hornby's very clever. They are clever. The engineers are clever. If you can imagine, you've got a loco that gives sound. Now, the sound and the piston sounds need to be in sync with the wheel movement and the piston.
Okay.
If you have steam as well, or if you like a humidifier, a modified or a fancy humidifier, the puff of steam needs to coincide with the chuff of the sound with the movement of the wheel. It's not easy. Hornby can do that.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And they've patented that. So you will have locos which will have steam coming out, but it's messy steam rather than sort of it's not even evaporated. It's a mist you get from a humidifier. You won't have the sink. It won't.
No.
It might do that, but it won't be in sync. So Hornby's very clever, but there are other things that they can do to a loco. But everybody's striving for that little bit more, that little bit more, that little bit more. But of course, that little bit more means that little bit more expense.
Yeah, and it just is such a change in time with different toys and different.
Yes, it is. But you've got new trains coming on the market. You've got the Stadler Flirt, which is running around in Wales and Norfolk way, Greater Anglia. You've got the you've got the Hitachi Azuma.
So there is new trains coming on all the time as well.
Yeah, it's a shame with the HS2 system because there were new trains going on that, but I'm not sure really where that is now.
So what's your future now?
Mine?
You're going to keep writing?
Yeah, I've got a couple of things on the go.
You're not going to retire? You're not going to relax? You're not going to build your train set?
No, I think people ask me. I think I've got... When I first left Hornby, Myra would say, Simon's retired. I said, no, I'm not retired, love. I'm not retired. Anything but retired. I've now got myself into a bit of a mindset because it was a little bit of a milestone on this last birthday. Well, I'd arguably say I'm semi-retired. So I now don't feel so guilty if I think, because I like to mess about in the garage. I like to mess about with wood, or there's the garden and things, I like spend time doing a bit of that or walking the dogs.
Yeah.
I would say I'm probably semi-retired, but I like the idea of writing.
Do you still like going to the shows and things like that?
I've been asked to open a show on the 1st of November at Gravesend.
Right.
And then from there, driving to Spalding, where there's a show, and where I'll be doing, provided the books have turned up, I'll be doing the book signing. Signing and selling. Signing and selling.
Well, it's great. It sounds like you've had a fantastic career.
Well,
and you've enjoyed it.
It could be when people say, so how long have you been at Hornby? And I'd say, 30 years, 40. Really? I said, yeah, that either shows somebody who's got little ambition or, he's
not
a
at all. I mean, if you love doing something, you're you're an entrepreneur, aren't you, basically?
I probably am. I like, if somebody said to me, do you want to go back to Hornby? Yeah. Oh, good.
You would like to go back?
Yeah, of course I would.
Well, if anyone's listening, you might get an offer.
But I think hell might freeze over before then, because you've got. There comes a time when you've got to let go,
because the younger people, they've got other ideas.
Yeah.
But I've still got some great ideas, stuff they could do.
Well, it seems such a shame, don't it, that you've got all these great ideas and they're not getting.
Well,
maybe.
I think they're great ideas, but other people may think they're not. I'm not. I'm not arrogant enough to think that. But I was pleased. I got the story down. Yeah. But there's, as I said, I can't. There's over in that between the lines. There's over 200,000 words. Well, I wrote over 300,000.
Oh, right.
So there are chapters and things and stories that still could be told.
Who's your target market for this book? Train enthusiasts?
I think people who are interested in the history of Hornby. I think it's people who are interested in the hobby. I mean, look, I do not kid myself. I don't think I'll be nominated for the Pulitzer Prize.
Who knows?
No, I don't think I'll be going to that book show, wherever it is, somewhere in the Cotswolds, wherever it is. I don't think I'll get that. But it's what gives you the thrill is when people say, "Yeah, I really enjoyed that book."
Yeah, I think they will. If people are looking to get your book, where would they find it now?
They can either buy it online.
Yeah.
They can either come to the Spalding show and it will be there. That's 1st and 2nd of November, or they can get it from Key Publishing, which again is online, or there will be quite a few model shops
that will be
will stock it.
Any plans to do another book, or you?
Yeah, as I say, I've got stuff to do. It's been this summer's been a little bit of been interesting. I have written a few chapters, but it's. Do you know what's the worst thing about not getting up and going to an office every day? Is the winter.
Yeah. Well, especially like yesterday.
Yeah. It's, what the hell do you do?
Yeah. You have to find things to do.
But I find, the thing is, I can get in my office. I've got a healthy email correspondence thing going. There's a few people who want a little bit of advice. And, and then in the quiet times, write the book.
So what are you going to tell to all those businessmen out there and people looking to retire? You're telling them not to?
Yeah. I think very carefully. Think very carefully about retiring. I generally do believe that. Yeah. I've known people who've retired. In fact, one of the people who helped with the TT, he retired and was pleased to get back to Hornby to help out with the TT.
Yeah.
And people have, I've had people say, "Oh, I'm thinking of retiring." Think very carefully. Yeah. It's nice while the sun shines.
Yeah.
What are you going to do in the winter when it's short days and you haven't got a dog to walk? What are you going to do? I've got stuff I like to do. Yeah. I like to make things out of wood from scrap wood.
Yeah. So you've got some hobbies.
I wouldn't call it a hobby. I'd just call it something to do, really. I mean,
filling your time.
I'm filling the time. I was fiddling around yesterday. But
I reckon there could be another few books in you then, Simon.
We'll see. We'll see.
Lovely. Thanks for coming in.
No,
really enjoyed that.
You're welcome.
And thanks for all the advice to these people about not retiring.
Not retiring. Don't retire. Joseph said to me, he said he has people coming in talking about buying a new car. And he said, and they've retired, and all they're saying is what they used to do.
Yeah.
He said, and you'd be surprised how many, after a year, after retired, you go into their funeral.
Oh. On that happy note.
I know. Don't retire.
Thanks, Simon.
All right, mate. You're welcome.